Every assistant quit the paralyzed mafia boss within hours, until a single mom refused to walk away. A true story. Chicago, Illinois, 2019-2022. The story of Dominic Caruso started the way most powerful men's stories start. Quietly, behind closed doors, with other people doing whatever he said. For more than 30 years, Dominic ran his operations across Chicago's South Side. He was not a man you crossed. He was not a man you questioned. Even the people who hated him most never said so out loud. When he walked into a room, conversations stopped. When he made a decision, that was the end of it. No debate, no pushback. Just silence and obedience. He had a penthouse on Lakeshore Drive with floor-to-ceiling windows that looked straight out over Lake Michigan. On clear mornings, the water looked almost silver. He used to stand at that window every day with a black coffee, watching the city wake up, feeling like the whole thing belonged to him. And in many ways, it did. Then, on a Tuesday morning in March 2019, his bodyguard found him on the bathroom floor. He had suffered a massive stroke. The left side of his body had simply stopped working. His speech came out slow and slurred. He could not stand. He could not walk. He could not even hold a glass of water without someone helping him. The man who had made grown adults shake with one look could no longer get himself to the kitchen. The doctors saved his life, but the life they saved was nothing like the one he had before. His 3 adult children hired the first caregiver within days. She arrived on a Monday morning, bright and professional, and tried to help him eat his breakfast. Dominic threw the tray at her. She walked out and never came back. The second caregiver was a man in his 40s who had worked with difficult patients before. He lasted 2 hours. Dominic spent those 2 hours telling him exactly what he thought of him, in language that would make most people turn red. The man picked up his bag and left. The third quit after half a day, the fourth after just a few hours. By the end of 8 months, 14 different people had tried and failed. Some cried on the way out. One called the police, though nothing came of it. A couple filed complaints with the staffing agency. The pattern was always the same. They arrived full of good intentions, and Dominic broke them within hours. His children could not agree on what to do next. His oldest daughter, Elena, was managing most of what remained of the family's legitimate business. Her brothers were too busy arguing with each other to be of much help. Nobody could force Dominic to leave the penthouse, and he flatly refused to go to a facility. So the problem just sat there, getting harder every day. The staffing agency had nearly given up sending anyone. But in November 2019, a coordinator named Patricia received a new application that she decided to try one last time. The woman was 34 years old, a mother of 2, and she had been working 2 jobs for the past 3 years to keep her family going. Her husband had died in a construction accident 3 years earlier, a fall from scaffolding that he did not survive. She had been on her own ever since. Her son was 9 years old. Her daughter had just turned 6. She had some experience in home care and had worked briefly in a hospice setting. She had $212 in her bank account when she sent in her application. Her landlord had given her 60 days. Patricia called her and was completely upfront about the situation. 14 people before her, a client who had driven all of them away in under a single day. Most experienced caregivers in the city had already turned this placement down. She went through the risks the way someone reads from a report. The woman asked what the pay was. Patricia told her. She said she would take the job. Her name was Teresa Vega. She showed up at 7 o'clock in the morning on a Thursday. The doorman in the lobby gave her a look that said good luck and meant the opposite. Elena met her at the elevator and gave her a quick briefing. Don't ask about the past, don't bring up the business, don't look afraid, and try not to take anything personally. Elena delivered the last part with a small, tired laugh that made it clear she had failed at all 4 herself. Teresa rode the elevator up and walked into the apartment. Dominic was sitting in his motorized wheelchair by the big window, facing the lake, his back to the door. He didn't turn around when she came in. Another one, he said. Not to her, just to the glass. Teresa looked at him for a moment. Good morning, Mr. Caruso, she said. My name is Teresa. I'm here to help you start your day. He turned the chair slowly and looked at her. It was the kind of look that had made lawyers stammer and made strong men step back. He studied her face for a moment. You have kids, he said. Flat, not a question. 2, she said. A boy and a girl. He looked at her a beat longer. Then he turned the chair back to the window. They didn't speak again for the rest of the morning, but she stayed until 6 o'clock. And she came back on Friday. The tests started almost immediately. Dominic told her his medication schedule was wrong. Teresa checked the prescription log quietly, confirmed it was correct, and told him so, calmly, without raising her voice, without apologizing in a way that sounded nervous. He stared at her. Nobody corrected him that calmly. It unsettled him in a way he couldn't quite name. Later that morning, he tipped a glass of water across the kitchen floor. Then he sat back in his chair and waited to see what she would do. Teresa found a cloth, cleaned it up, and said nothing. No sigh, no comment, nothing. At lunch, he pushed the meal delivery container aside and said it was garbage. Teresa looked in the refrigerator, found a few eggs, some bread, and a handful of old herbs, and made a simple frittata on the stove. He ate half of it without a word. His daughter Elena found out later and told Teresa that was more than he had eaten at a meal in weeks. Over the weeks that followed, Dominic tested her in other ways. He shouted at her twice, once because the television remote had been moved a few inches, and once because she had to step away briefly to take a call from her son's school. Both times, Teresa let him finish. Then she stated, calmly and plainly, what had happened and what she would do differently. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't cry. She didn't apologize 15 times in a row. She simply said what needed to be said, and then got back to work. The shouting confused him. In his world, shouting was a tool. It produced results. People backed down, or ran, or gave him what he wanted. Teresa did none of those things. She absorbed his anger the way a person absorbs rain. She noticed it, but it didn't change where she was going. About 3 weeks into the job, he asked about her husband. She hadn't brought it up herself. He had noticed something, maybe the ring she still wore, or something in the way she moved. She told him plainly. The accident, the hospital, the 3 days of waiting, the Saturday afternoon when the waiting ended. She kept her voice steady. She had told this story enough times that she knew how to get through it without falling apart in front of a stranger. Dominic was quiet for a long time after that. How old are your kids? He finally asked. My son is 9, she said. My daughter just turned 6. He nodded once and turned back to the window. That was all. But that evening, when Elena stopped by, Dominic told her to make sure Teresa's payment was processed on time, and with no delay. In 8 months of hiring caregivers, he had never once said anything like that about any of them. By January 2020, Teresa had become the only consistent presence in Dominic's daily life. She had learned what actually helped his days go better. The Cubs games needed to be on mute with the radio commentary playing at the same time. That was the only combination he would tolerate. Coffee was black, and only until noon. The window had to be opened for 20 minutes every morning, even in the middle of winter, because he liked the cold air on his face first thing. She didn't treat these as quirks or problems. She just remembered them and made sure they happened. She also pushed back when he tried to skip his physical therapy. Not with guilt, not with warnings about what might happen to his health, just with the same quiet, unbothered stubbornness she used when her 9-year-old claimed he was too tired to do his homework. She had raised 2 children mostly on her own for 3 years. She knew how to hold a line without turning it into a fight. And then, slowly, he started to talk. Not about business. That door stayed firmly closed. But about other things. About growing up on the South Side, in a small house where the winters were long and the walls were thin. About his mother, who had come from another country with almost nothing and had built a life through sheer will. About a dog he had as a boy, a scrappy little thing he named Biscotto, which was the Italian word for biscuit. About his grandmother's kitchen and the particular smell of the food she made every Sunday morning. Teresa listened. She didn't treat his stories as confessions. She didn't look for hidden meaning in them. She just listened, the way she listened to her own son recount his school day. Fully present, without interrupting, without trying to make it mean something bigger than it was. When the lockdowns began in March 2020, the outside world went almost completely quiet. His children called on video screens from a safe distance. Visitors stopped coming entirely. The penthouse, already a lonely place, became more so. Teresa kept showing up. She wore a mask and brought her own food. She managed his medical appointments over video calls, tracked his prescriptions, and made sure he wasn't slipping into the kind of deep isolation that takes hold of people when they are alone too long. One afternoon in April 2020, Dominic asked her how much debt she was carrying. She told him that was none of his business. He smiled, just slightly, on one side of his face, the way a person smiles when they weren't expecting to be told no. He said she was right. The following morning, his attorney called Teresa. Dominic had arranged an anonymous educational fund for her 2 children. It had been set up through entirely legal channels, in a way that was clean and above board in every sense. The attorney explained the terms. Teresa said she couldn't accept it. The attorney told her Dominic had expected exactly that response, and had structured the account so that it could not be returned. She went down to her car in the parking garage, sat in the driver's seat, and cried for nearly 15 minutes. She didn't say anything to Dominic about it. She came back the next morning at 7 o'clock, made his coffee the way she always did, and went about the day. He didn't mention the fund, neither did she. Some things do not need to be said out loud to be understood. Dominic Caruso passed away in February 2022, 26 months after Teresa first walked through his door. He died in his wheelchair, by the window, looking out at Lake Michigan on a gray winter morning. The cause was cardiac arrest. Teresa had been there that morning. She had made his coffee. She had sat across the room while he looked out at the water the way he always did. He passed away roughly 20 minutes after she left for the day. His will included a personal letter addressed to Teresa. The contents were never made public. She has never described what it said. She still works in home care today. She now manages a small team of caregivers across several placements around Chicago. On her phone, she keeps a photograph she took one quiet afternoon from the penthouse window, the lake, in winter, wide and gray and still. She has never given a long explanation for why she didn't quit on that first day, or the second, or the third. When people ask her, she gives the same short answer every time, in the same simple words. He was just a man who needed help, she says. That's all I saw.